Hello, this is Terry Lou with myiPadLive.com, and today I'm demonstrating part 3 of Reserve for Nina. I have done part 1 and part 2 previously, so please be sure to watch those so you can see how I got to the part that I'm going to move forward from today. So today I'm going to demonstrate how I use Snapseed, FX Photo Studio, and Dynamic Light along with this workflow. I am not demonstrating how these apps work. I'm more demonstrating my workflow and the choices that I made. So the first thing I'm going to do in Snapseed is open an image. I'm going to go to my photo library, and I have created the folder for Nina. And now I'm going to pick the choice that I move forward with. I've already used Word Photo and Image Blender and Filter Storm to get to this point. And from here in Snapseed, I'm going to sharpen the image. I'm going to put a frame around it, and I'm also going to use drama. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Details folder, and I'm going to use the Details folder. I'm picking the structure portion of it, and I'm going to use that to sharpen the edges. So with structure, my choice is to bring the structure up to usually between 35 and 45. And again, that's a personal choice. Unfortunately, with this one, you do have the loop, so you can see some changes. And if you have the loop on here, you can see the before and after and how it just basically sharpens those areas just a bit more, just kind of popping them for us. So after I decide where I want this folder, Details folder, to be, I apply that, and then I can move forward to the next folder. I love the frames in here. My favorite frame that I use is when you tap Style. I like frame 2. And with frame 2, you have, like all the frames, you have the frame width and the frame offset choice. I usually start with the offset, and I very rarely have much of the white showing, so I usually as little white as possible, which is the smallest offset. And the next choice is the frame width, and in that case you can either have a lot of black around your frame or very little. And in this case, especially because at the bottom it says Reserve for Nina, I didn't want to cut that off, so I'm doing a pretty narrow black line around it. And then I'm going to tap Apply here. So the next thing that I decided that I wanted to do was add a little drama to it. And in this case, you also have the style choices. You have drama 1, drama 2. You can go dark. You can go really bright. I personally like drama 2 for this image. And in this case, you also have saturation. You can add a lot of saturation, just a little bit of saturation. And your filter strength, you can see how this filter is applied. As you move your finger, you have the bar moving back and forth on the bottom, or you can also see filter strength up at the top, change numbers. So again, this is just personal choice, and I just kind of find an area in here that I like, and be sure if you have any doubts before and after, you can see I just am brightening it just a bit, making the whites just a little bit more whiter. So before and the after, and now I'll tap Apply. So with Snapseed, it's easy to save. Again, I just applied all those choices, so I've now just applied the Details folder, the Frames folder, and the Drama folder. I have not saved any of the work as I've been going. So be sure that you tap Save, so you have that image in your camera roll before you move forward. So from here, the story of this was that this lady took the bus in every day, and to this burger place that also has breakfast. It's called Burgerville. It's in Portland. And she always wanted to sit in the same spot. However, she wasn't very happy when people were in her spot, so they made sure that she had a plaque so everybody knew that that was her spot. She has since passed away, so part of this image, I thought it would be a good idea to make it more antique look. So I have some favorite filters in FX Photo Studio that I use for that. And so I'm going to now open this image in FX Photo Studio. I'm going to go back to my folder for Nina. And of course, all the choices that I've done have already been done and put into For Nina. I'm just bringing these images from the folder that I've already created that for demonstration purposes, I wanted to have the whole folder. And if you go to part 1, you'll be able to see how I've processed this image all the way through. So this is the image as it came out of Snapseed with the details folder, the frame folder, and the drama folder over it. So from here, I'm going to go to my favorites, which if you see on the right-hand side, all the stars in gold, if you tap on all effects, you'll just see a few golden stars, and favorites are the folder with all the gold stars. So as I scroll down, I'll have just my favorites here. And again, I'd encourage you to select just your favorites so you can not have to go through all 180 some of these, or there's quite a few of them. One of my favorites is this ancient canvas. So as I tap on ancient canvas, I'm able to create, again, an antique look. And because I had this white frame, it's no longer white as much anymore, but you can see how it brought in an antique look into this. So I'm going to actually lower the antique look a tad and not bring it in so strong. And one of the things about this filter is it only seems to want to put it on one side of the image. So you can see it's more dominant on the frame, especially on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. So when I find out or decide where I want the amount to be, what I like to do in this case, especially on an image that I want it to be equal on each side, is I will tap apply, and now I will actually go into the tools in the top part of this app, and I will rotate it, and I'm using, to rotate this, I'm using the third choice over the two arrows going horizontally, and I'm going to flip it. Now, from here, I can just tap in Ancient Canvas again, and you see that it applied it to the other side, or again to the left-hand side. So I'm going to leave the amount there so they're equal, and I'm going to tap Apply again. And don't forget to tap Tools, Rotate, and rotate the image back again. So now I've got an equal border on each side. So as this layer, I want to be sure that I save this layer to my photo album, and that happens relatively quickly. And next I'm going to use bump mapping. And the reason I'm going to use bump mapping is I want to have some texture brought into this image. So if you use the bump mapping choice, you can see it grays out and it actually adds like an embossing look. And again, when you have your different amounts, my battery's going a little low here. Don't count on these amounts being totally accurate. As you can see, it looks really unclear here, I guess is the best way to do it, describe it. And but as it processes after you tap apply, it'll actually be a little clearer. So one of the things that I want to do, because I know I want to use this as a blending layer, I like to make it as white as possible so most of this, the image, can go back into the blending layer. So I bump up the background to the 100% all the way over to the right, and the amount again is just up to your choice. Usually for something like this, I'll have it pretty strong. Now as I hit apply again, like I said, you'll see it'll define it just a little bit better and not be so muddled. See, there it popped in much clearer. Now I'm going to save this layer and move forward back to Image Blender. Now again, I use Image Blender for a lot of different things. Before I was just looking at the different selections in part 2 of this tutorial. And so now I'm going to bring in from the library, I'm going to go into Fornina, and I'm going to bring in the one that I had the ancient canvas on both sides. And I know sometimes it's hard to tell which image you have, especially as you're building these, but just you'll get used to being able to tell what you've done to each image as you've been going along. Again, I don't have a white frame again. I was able to get rid of that and add some antique look to it. So this was the first ancient canvas in FX Photo Studio, and now I'm going to bring in the bump mapped, or the textured, depending on how you want to think about it, version. Now, if you leave it in the blending mode normal, you can see that you kind of get this fog that happens over the image, and that's no good. So one of my favorites in this, when I'm doing a bump map, is to select darken, and after you make the choice of darken, you tap the image, and then if you slide the slider over, you see here's not much of the bump map, but it starts to pop in. You can actually really see it in the handle and so forth. And if that one doesn't seem to work for you, you can try different ones. Here it's really dark. Actually, this one might work better for this one, or for this image. Darken might work better, but it does make the image pretty dark. But as you see, as you move the slider all the way over to the bump map side, it really starts to pop in some of that area, even though it's pretty dark. I'm going to leave it here because I really like the texture in the frame and the cup and so forth. So I'm going to tap save. I'm going to go to the camera roll. And because I know that the image got quite a bit darker, I'm going to use my favorite app for that, called Dynamic Light. And I'm able to use Dynamic Light to actually bring in more of the brightness into that image again. So if I tap on the lower left-hand corner, the photos look like one on top of each other. I'm going to go into Fornina. Now I know this is the image right after the bump mapping because that's where I was. And there it is, pretty dark. But it popped in to the dynamic light and brightened it quite a bit. Now you have a couple slider choices here. You have the radius slider, which as you move it, you can see that it just kind of changes the direction of the light. And again, where do you put it? That's a personal choice. Every image will be different, so you'll just have to always check and see where you like the light source to be. And then the next slider over, the dynamic light, you can move it all the way over to the left. You can see it's pretty much back to the dark, or move it all the way to the right and it'll really pop. Now again, this is showing up a little darker on my computer screen, so I'm sure everybody's computer screen's a little different, but I'm going to make a choice somewhat about in here. And you can see it just pop those colors again. So now I'm going to save that. I save the result image and process it. Takes a little bit of time to process this image in dynamic light. And since I already have this image saved, I'm going to move forward now, and I'm going to go back into the photos, and I'm going to show you what we did today. So I'm going to actually go from the beginning. This was the original image. In part 1, I described the original image. I showed how to use Word Photo. And in part 2, I brought it into Image Blender. I created this layer for the darker areas and the next layer for the lighter areas. And then I blended those layers into Filter Storm. These were the first 3 layers blended, and then I brought the original back in to do the plaque. And so today I started with this image in Snapseed. I sharpened the image and I put the frame around it. And then I added some of the drama to it. And after that, I brought it into FX Photo Studio. I put the ancient canvas on it, flipping the image so it went on both sides of the frame. I created the bump map version. And then I blended in Image Blender the bump map version and the antique canvas. And part 4 of this tutorial will move us forward, and I will, I have to go one more step here. I brought it into dynamic light. We popped it a bit in this part 3. So for part 4, I'm going to again bring in different portions of this image because I don't like how flat the image is right now. There's not much definition. You can't really tell the different depths of things. So I'm going to bring it back into FilterStorm and create some more depth and hopefully contrast and not have this image so flat. So I hope that you join me for part 4 of Reserved for Nina. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned some things, and I look forward to your comments. Thanks, and have a great day.